It's been 7 years since the release of the first Last of Us game. When it was released, it became one of the most praised video games of the last generation of consoles. The game itself went on to win a record-setting 200 Game of the Year awards, and later got a remastered version for the PlayStation 4. The Left Behind DLC also got a similar amount of praise, with Ashley Johnson in particular winning the BAFTA award for Best Video Game Performance. Fans for many years have been begging for a sequel to the game to continue the story between Joel and Ellie. Neil Druckmann, however, originally didn't want to continue the story between Joel and Ellie, as he felt that their story was finished. But after a while, he did think of a way of continuing their story in a new direction. While the first game was very clearly Joel's story, The Last of Us 2 would primarily be Ellie's story, much like the Left Behind DLC. The Last of Us Part 2 takes place 4 years after the ending of the first game. Ellie is now 19 and has adjusted to what could almost be called a normal life, despite there being still tons of infected in the world. She's established a budding relationship with a girl named Dina. However, from some character exposition, we find out that her friendship with Joel has been strained over the last few years. After going out onto a patrol, we then are introduced to our secondary main character for the game, Abby. She and her friends are in Wyoming on a revenge quest, searching for someone who is believed to be in the Jackson settlement. And before we continue any further, major spoilers are ahead for the story of the game. The man, in fact, that they are looking for is Joel. And after a couple of back and forth scenes going from Ellie and Abby, Abby herself encounters both Joel and Tommy, who actually end up saving her life from a bunch of infected. She then leads them to a mansion where she and her group have been staying at for the last few days. And what happens next is possibly one of the most heartbreaking and shocking death scenes in gaming.
Y'all should come back with us, restock before we head out.
Appreciate it. I'm Mel, by the way.
Tommy, this is my brother.
Joe. You heard of us or something?
Because they have.
No! No! Tommy, no!
Laura, all clear?
He's out. Put him against the wall.
Tommy! Get off me! Get off me!
No. Oh god. Oh my god!
Stupid old man.
Not my boy.
You don't get to rush this.
Please don't.
Oh. No.
Joel, please get up.
No! The death of Joel is easily the most controversial thing in the entire game, especially for how early on it happens, coming in at around the 2-hour mark in an almost 25 to 30 hour game. While of course there were a huge amount of supposed story leaks for the game, I stayed away from them, so going into this scene, I was caught completely off guard. The only true issue I have with this scene in general is that we spend very little total screen time with Joel before it happens, coming in at a total screen time of less than 25 minutes. I would have loved to have seen at least an hour to 2 hours worth of gameplay with Joel and Ellie before his untimely death. While we do get a multitude of flashbacks for both of them, I would have liked to have seen at least a little more during the beginning. That being said, it all at least makes sense for the story overall. We have to remember, this is no longer Joel's story, it's Ellie's. And after Joel is killed right in front of Ellie, she sets off for Seattle, Washington to track down every single person who is responsible for his death. Now that we've gotten some of the base story out of the way, let's talk about technicals. If we purely judge the game upon its technical aspects, it is a masterpiece in how to create incredibly realistic and beautiful environments. Naughty Dog as of lately have definitely been pushing the envelope in terms of what they can do with the PS4's hardware. This was first exemplified in Uncharted 4 and definitely enhanced with the release of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy. but they easily have pushed the PS4 to its limits and have created what could possibly be one of, if not the most technically beautiful game ever made.
What are you doing? Ellie, be careful.
I'm climbing a dinosaur!
Yeah, I can see that. Just don't die falling off of one.
Look at me! I'm on a motherfucking dinosaur!
Many of the mechanics for the game have returned, such as crafting, and the gunplay and combat have been refined to an incredible degree. The animations as well have been improved massively, thanks due to in part the advancements of technology and motion capture. Though this isn't really a surprise when you have a 7-year gap in between games, the technology is just going to get much better and better over time. Going back to the more narrative aspects of the game, we have the returning characters of Ellie and Joel, both played respectively by Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker, with both giving performances that quite easily surpass their performances in the original game. Whether anyone has problems with the game story-wise or with some of the directions that it takes, you cannot deny the level of amazing talent coming from every single one of the actors in the game, all of whom feel genuinely human and incredibly relatable. Abby herself, played by Laura Bailey, also gives a pretty badass performance as well. And while I do agree that it is jarring to try and find sympathy with a character after they have done something so horrible as to kill Joel, we oddly enough are actually able to sympathize with her as the game goes on. Learning specifically that the reason why she killed Joel in the first place was to take revenge on him for the death of her father, with her father being the actual surgeon who was going to perform the brain surgery on Ellie in the first game. Her actions, while they are horrible, are completely justifiable and understandable in this world, just as much as Ellie's actions are completely understandable for what Abby has done. Overall, I really loved The Last of Us Part 2. The gameplay and the visuals have been jacked up to the best possible version of what they can be for the current system's hardware. The story is filled with tons of grit, emotion, heart, and anguish, and the acting and directing is some of the best I've seen in interactive storytelling. While I would change up some of the pacing and the placement of a couple of scenes, specifically with adding more of Joel at the beginning, from what we got though, in my opinion, it is an absolute masterpiece. My final rating of The Last of Us Part 2 is a 9 out of 10.